The knock came just after dawn. 3 soft taps, spaced far apart, the kind of knock you'd expect from someone afraid to wake a sleeping dog. Sam Hollister sat at his kitchen table with a mug of coffee cooling in his hands, staring at the empty chair across from him. The wind outside scraped against the wooden walls, rattling the loose pane in the window. He figured the sound was just another branch, until that knock came again, soft, uncertain, but insistent enough to make his stomach tighten. Sam wasn't a man who got visitors. Out here, 30 miles from the nearest town, folks didn't just drop by unless something was wrong, or unless they aimed to do wrong. He rose slowly, the creak of the chair legs loud in the stillness. The Colt on the wall caught his eye, but the knock hadn't sounded like trouble. Still, habit made him check the cylinder before stepping to the door. He swung it open, and the morning light spilled in thin and gray. Standing there, framed against a backdrop of rolling prairie and frost-kissed grass, was a boy no taller than Sam's knee. Barefoot, cheeks chapped red from the wind. His hair was a mess of dusty blonde tangles, his coat a size too big and torn at the hem. The boy didn't say a word. His small hand clutched a crumpled envelope, the paper worn soft at the edges. Sam's gaze caught on the crooked, uneven letters, scrawled across the front in faded ink, "To the man who saved my brother." The words seemed to breathe in the cold air between them. Sam crouched, his boots crunching the frost. "You lost, kid." The boy's eyes lifted to meet his, wide, startlingly blue, but holding something far older than his years. Not fear exactly, more like the wary look of someone who's had reason to run before. "No, sir," the boy said softly. "I came to find you." The wind came in low from the north, curling around them, carrying the sharp bite of wood smoke from somewhere far off, too far for a boy to have come from without a horse. Sam glanced past him. There was nothing but open land in all directions, the kind that could hide both danger and salvation if you didn't know where to look. "How long you been out here?" Sam asked. The boy shrugged one narrow shoulder. "Since the moon went away." That told Sam enough. He'd been walking all night, alone. Sam took the envelope, feeling the grit of dirt ground into the paper. The writing wasn't a child's, though it leaned uneven, the way a hand does when the writer is in a hurry. He didn't open it yet. Instead, he stepped back and jerked his chin toward the inside. "Come on in. You look about ready to fall over." The boy hesitated, his bare toes curling against the cold porch boards, then crossed the threshold. Inside, the air was warmer, smelling faintly of coffee and last night's stew. Sam closed the door against the wind, watching as the boy's shoulders eased, just a little. He poured himself a fresh cup of coffee and warmed some milk in a tin cup for the boy, setting it in front of him at the table. The boy wrapped his hands around it, holding it close as if to soak the heat straight into his bones. Sam sat across from him, the envelope still in hand. "What's your name?" the boy sipped before answering. "Eli." "You got a last name." "Eli?" Another shrug. "Tate." Something shifted in Sam's chest. Tate. The name was like a nail pricking an old scar. He'd only known one man by that name, Jesse Tate, and the last time Sam had seen him, they were both bleeding under a canyon moon, running from gunfire. He'd dragged Jesse out of that mess against his better judgment, and Jesse had disappeared. Soon after, without so much as a thank you. That was years ago. Sam turned the envelope over in his hands. The seal was cracked, like someone had already read it, or maybe just worn it thin in the carrying. He opened it, eyes scanning the words. Written in a shaky hand. "If you're reading this, you saved my brother once. Now I need you to save him again. Please. Before it's too late. JT." Sam leaned back in his chair. The coffee had gone cold, and the warmth in the room felt a little thinner. He didn't know what kind of trouble Jesse had gotten himself into this time, but trouble had a way of multiplying, especially in the West. He looked across the table at Eli, whose milk was already half gone. The boy's eyes met his, and in them Sam saw no begging, no whining, just a quiet, steady plea. That didn't need words. It was the kind of look that told Sam one thing clear. Whatever this was, it wasn't going to wait. Inside the cabin, Eli sat stiff-backed in one of Sam's kitchen chairs, his feet barely reaching the rung. He kept both hands cupped around the tin cup of warm milk, like he was holding the last fire in the world. Sam dropped into the chair across from him, the letter between them on the table. Outside, the wind had shifted, rattling the loose shingles, making the old place groan like it remembered storms that had nearly torn it apart. He read the letter again, slow this time, letting each word sink. If you're reading this, you saved my brother once. Now I need you to save him again. Please, before it's too late. JT. Sam folded the paper, slid it back into the envelope, and set it down. You know what this says? He asked. Eli nodded. Then you know I can't promise I can help. The boy's gaze didn't waver. You helped him before? That was a long time ago, Sam said. His voice came out sharper than he meant. And I had my reasons then. The boy kept staring at him, quiet as snowfall. Sam had met men who begged and bartered, men who lied and threatened. But he couldn't remember the last time someone simply sat there, trusting him without trying to twist his arm. That kind of trust was heavier than a rope around the neck. You alone out there when you came knocking? Sam asked finally. Eli shook his head. I was with someone. They didn't come with me all the way. Who? The boy hesitated. A friend of Jesse's. He said he couldn't be seen here, said I had to do the last bit myself. Sam leaned back in his chair, jaw tightening. That told him more than Eli realized. Whoever this friend was, he didn't want to risk being recognized around Sam's place, which meant this wasn't a simple matter of a man gone missing. Where is your brother? Sam asked. Eli's fingers tightened around the cup. They got him at the old silver mine. The name dropped between them like a stone into deep water. Sam knew that mine, knew its twisting tunnels, the rot in its beams, and the kind of men who holed up there now. It was a place you went when you wanted someone gone without burying them yourself. Sam got up, pacing to the stove to top off his coffee. And how exactly am I supposed to walk into that place and just fetch him out? The boy's voice came quiet but steady. You're the man who saved him before. You can do it again. Sam set his cup down harder than he intended. The bay sound made the boy flinch. Not much, but enough for Sam to see it. There was a bruise on Eli's arm, high near the shoulder, yellow at the edges, purple at the center. It wasn't the kind you got from falling. Sam sat back down, softer this time. Who gave you that? Eli looked at the table. One of the men at the mine, before they took Jesse. Sam's jaw clenched. That was all the answer he needed. For years he'd kept to himself, letting the world burn or heal as it saw fit. He'd told himself he'd done his part, that the West didn't need one more man with a gun and a grudge. But staring at this boy, barefoot, bruised, and sitting in his kitchen because there was nowhere else to go, Sam knew the lie in that thinking. He took another long look at the letter, at the uneven scrawl of Jesse Tate's name. There was no asking someone else to handle this. Not if Jesse was still alive. Not if this boy was sitting here because he had no one else to turn to. What's your brother worth to you, Eli? Sam asked. Everything, the boy said, without a blink. Sam gave a slow nod. Then finish your milk. We leave by sundown. Eli's shoulders loosened, and for the first time, something that almost looked like relief crossed his face. Sam didn't feel relief. Not yet. The mine was 2 days' ride, and there was no telling who or what waited there. But one thing was certain. If Jesse Tate was still breathing, the men holding him wouldn't be for long. Outside, the wind shifted again, carrying with it the scent of snow on the horizon, and Sam knew this wasn't just another trail ride. It was the start of something that could burn through the rest of his quiet days like dry grass in summer. By the time the sun began its slow drop toward the horizon, Sam had made up his mind. He saddled the roan mare he trusted most, a sturdy, sure-footed horse named Josie, and tied a second, smaller gelding for Eli. The boy stood by the hitching post, silent, the oversized coat wrapped tight around him. His breath puffed white in the evening chill. Sam stuffed the letter into the inside pocket of his duster, where the wind couldn't get at it. He'd left it there on purpose. It was a weight he could feel over his heart, a reminder of why they were leaving. "You ride before?" Sam asked. Eli nodded once. Some'll do." Sam gave him a leg up onto the gelding, adjusting the stirrups until the boy's boots sat snug. Eli didn't complain about the cold, didn't ask where they were headed. That quiet stubbornness, same as Jesse's, made Sam's gut tighten. The prairie opened wide before them, a sweep of pale gold grass whispering in the wind. The air was sharp enough to cut, smelling faintly of sage and the ghost of old fires. Somewhere far off, a coyote called, its voice stretching over the land like a warning. They rode in silence for the first hour. The only sounds were the steady clop of hooves and the creak of saddle leather. Sam kept scanning the horizon, habit from years when trouble seemed to find him whether he was looking for it or not. Out here, distance could hide a man until he was right on top of you. "You said the mine," Sam said finally. "Which one?" "The big one," Eli answered. "Up past Redwater Creek." Sam grunted. That mine had been dead for 10 years, abandoned after a cave-in killed a dozen men. The silver veins had played out long before that. Now it was nothing but a hole in the earth for desperate men to hide in, and desperate men could be more dangerous than a full regiment of soldiers. "How many?" Eli hesitated. 4, maybe 5. But they got rifles, and they got Jesse. Sam didn't ask how the boy knew that. He could read it in the way Eli's shoulders hunched, like he was bracing against something he'd already seen. The wind shifted, bringing with it the scent of snow. Sam glanced up at the sky, thin streaks of cloud gathering low over the hills. Snow meant slower riding, colder nights. It also meant tracks wouldn't last long, for better or worse. They camped by a frozen creek that night. Sam built a small fire, keeping it low so it wouldn't be seen from too far. Eli sat close, hands stretched toward the flames, steam rising from his damp boots. "You ever been out this far before?" Sam asked. "No, sir." "You afraid?" The boy thought about it. "A little." Then, after a pause, "Not as much as I was when they took him." Sam poked at the fire with a stick, the embers sparking red. "That your only brother?" "Yes, sir. He's all I got." That hit Sam harder than he expected. He thought of his own brother, buried years ago in a shallow grave outside Abilene, a casualty of someone else's feud. The West had a way of stripping a man down until there was nothing left but what he could hold in his hands or in his heart. They didn't talk much after that. Sam rolled himself in his blanket, letting the cold air sting his face, watching the stars blink alive overhead. Beside him, the boy's breathing evened out, though every so often Eli would twitch as if shaking off a dream. Sometime after midnight, a faint sound drifted in, the soft rhythm of distant hoofbeats. Sam sat up slow, hand going to the Colt under his blanket. The sound faded after a few moments, swallowed by the wind, but he kept his eyes on the dark line of the horizon long after. By dawn, frost had crusted over the grass and their blankets. Sam brewed coffee, poured Eli hot water with a pinch of sugar, and they mounted up again. The mine was still a day's ride off, and every mile would bring them closer to men who wouldn't think twice about putting a bullet in either of them. Sam glanced back at the boy riding behind him, his small hands gripping the reins with quiet determination. He didn't say it out loud, but the thought came anyway. If this goes bad, I'll have to make sure the boy gets out, even if I don't. The wind picked up again, carrying the scent of iron and something else. Something faint and bitter that made Sam think of blood. They were getting close. By the afternoon of the second day, the prairie had given way to broken country, low ridges of red rock, twisted juniper trees, and gullies that could hide a man or swallow a horse whole. The sky had turned a pale, icy blue, the kind that made distances look closer than they were. Sam reined Josie in at the crest of a rise. From here, the land dipped into a narrow valley, its far end swallowed by a jagged wall of stone. Beyond that wall, hidden from sight but etched in Sam's memory, lay the entrance to the old Redwater silver mine. Eli's gelding came up beside him, the boy's breath puffing in the cold air. "That's it?" he asked. "Close enough to smell the rot," Sam said, scanning the valley floor. There, a thin thread of smoke curling from behind a stand of cottonwoods, not the kind of smoke from a campfire meant for cooking. This was slow, smoldering, meant to burn all day. A signal for those who knew where to look. Sam's stomach tightened. Whoever was down there wasn't trying to stay invisible. They were trying to control who came in and who went out. They dismounted and led the horses down a narrow deer trail that zigzagged into the valley. The wind shifted, carrying with it the faint tang of coal smoke and something sour, almost metallic. Sam knew that smell. Blood, dried and left to sit. He stopped in a patch of shadow beneath a rock overhang and crouched low. "We walk from here," he said. "Keep quiet. Keep close." Eli nodded, his face pale but steady. The boy had grit. Sam had to give him that. They moved along the edge of the valley using the brush and rock for cover. The closer they got, the more details came into view. A pair of horses tied near the cottonwoods, two men sitting by the fire, rifles propped within arm's reach. Both wore battered coats and wide-brimmed hats pulled low, their faces hidden. But their posture told Sam enough. They were at ease because they thought they owned the place. Sam's mind drifted back to Dead Horse Canyon, to the night he'd first met Jesse Tate. Same kind of men, same kind of camp. That night had ended in blood, dust, and a debt Sam had never intended to repay, and yet here he was, about to pay it in full. He motioned for Eli to stay low behind a boulder. "You don't move unless I tell you. If something happens, you run for the horses and ride west. Don't look back." Eli's eyes narrowed. "What if they see me?" "Then you run faster." Sam eased forward, belly to the ground, until he had a better view of the mine entrance. It was nothing but a black hole in the rock, framed by splintered timbers and half buried under years of fallen debris. But the tracks in the dirt, boot prints, fresh ones, told him the place was far from abandoned. A third man emerged from the mine, tall and broad-shouldered, dragging something behind him. Sam's jaw clenched when he saw it was a man, a limp, bound figure whose head lolled forward. Even at this distance, Sam recognized the dark hair and the stubborn set of the jaw. Jesse Tate. They dumped him near the fire, and one of the guards kicked him lightly in the ribs, laughing when Jesse didn't react. Sam felt his fingers tighten around the grip of his Colt. Eli shifted behind the boulder. "Is he alive?" Sam cut in, though he wasn't entirely sure. For now, he counted heads again. 3 men in sight, but that didn't mean there weren't more inside the mine. A frontal rush would be suicide. He needed to wait for the right moment, and moments like that didn't come easy. As the shadows lengthened, the men by the fire started talking louder, their voices carrying in the thin air. Sam caught bits and pieces. Money, a deadline, someone named Cooper who was on his way. Whoever Cooper was, Sam figured he wasn't coming with good intentions. That meant time was running shorter than he'd thought. He slid back toward Eli. "We camp here tonight. Tomorrow, we find a way to take him back." Eli's lips pressed into a thin line, his small hands curling into fists. "If they hurt him again, they will. Sam said flatly. "That's why we don't wait too long." Above them, the sky deepened to a bruised purple, the first stars winking awake. In the valley below, the fire by the cottonwoods glowed like a watchful eye, daring Sam to try and take back what they'd claimed. And Sam Hollister, for the first time in years, felt the old heat in his chest, the kind that meant he just might accept the dare. The cold of the valley seemed to sink deeper the closer Jed and the boy crept toward the mine. The moon was climbing now, pale and unforgiving, turning the jagged rock into silver teeth. Jed's boots found quiet places to land, his weight shifting, with the patience of a predator. Beside him, the boy mimicked his movements, small and ghost-like, his breath coming in quick puffs that vanished in the night. "Stay here," Jed whispered, his voice like gravel sliding in a pan. He pointed to a cluster of sagebrush against the cliff wall. "If you hear shooting, don't move. Not toward me, not toward them. You run, you hear?" The boy nodded, though his wide eyes said he had no intention of leaving. Jed didn't have time to argue. The campfire down below was little more than an ember glow now, but it was enough to paint the scene. Two men leaning back on crates, rifles within arm's reach, and the third, a tall man with a crooked hat, kneeling beside a figure tied to a post. The prisoner's head hung low, hair matted, but a faint movement told Jed he was still breathing. Jed's stomach tightened. Could this be the brother the boy's letter spoke of? A gust of wind rattled the loose tin nailed above the mine's entrance, masking the sound of Jed's first steps out from the shadows. He stayed low, his hand on the worn grip of his Colt, feeling the rhythm of the night around him. Every flicker of the fire, every shift in the wind, he read it like a map. The tall man stood, muttering something to his partners. "Boss wants him talking by morning," Jed caught. His voice was a lazy drawl, but there was an edge under it, the kind that meant trouble. Jed's jaw tightened. He slipped to the side, hugging the shadow cast by the cliff. One of the men leaned forward, tossing another stick on the fire. The flames cracked loud in the silence, sending sparks swirling into the night. It was now or never. Jed moved. In 3 silent steps, he was behind the first man, the Colt already drawn. He slammed the barrel into the man's temple and caught him, as he slumped, lowering him to the dirt without a sound. The second man saw the movement and reached for his rifle. Too late. Jed's shot cracked through the night like a lightning strike, the bullet hitting clean in the man's shoulder. He spun, dropped the weapon, and crumpled with a howl. The tall man cursed and pulled a revolver from his hip. Jed ducked behind. A crate as a bullet whined past, chipping stone from the cliff wall. The prisoner stirred at the noise, his head snapping up. Jed peeked out, lining the tall man in his sights, but before he could fire, the boy, Lord help him, was running down the slope yelling, "Jed!" The tall man's eyes flicked toward the sound. Jed took his shot. The revolver flew from the man's hand as he staggered back. Jed was on him in 2 strides, kicking the gun away and shoving him hard into the ground. The man spat dust and glared. "Up. You don't know what you're messing with, cowboy," he hissed. Jed ignored him, cutting the ropes on the prisoner. The man's wrists were raw, and he could barely stand. Jed threw an arm under his shoulder, steadying him. The boy reached them, panting. "Is it?" The prisoner lifted his head, eyes finding the boy's. Even under the dirt and bruises, the resemblance was there. "Eli," the prisoner rasped, voice breaking. The boy's face crumpled, tears freezing on his cheeks. "I found him, Sam. I found him like Ma said." Jed felt the weight of the moment settle heavy on his chest. He wasn't one for family reunions, but this was different. "Time to move," he muttered, scanning the dark ridge above. "We ain't alone out here." From the distant hills, the faint echo of hoofbeats began to roll through the night, and Jed knew, without seeing, that more men were coming. The gunfight was over. The echoes of the last shot still bounced off the mine walls, but now there was only the sound of ragged breathing, his and the boys'. The acrid smell of gunpowder clung to the air, mixing with the damp earth. The outlaws lay sprawled in the dirt, one unmoving, the other groaning in pain, his weapon kicked far out of reach. Thomas McGraw holstered his revolver, the adrenaline still humming in his veins like a restless stallion. His ears strained, but all he heard was the faint whimper of the boy pressed against the mine wall. "It's over, son," Thomas said softly, his voice low and steady. "Ain't no one gonna hurt you now." The boy's blue eyes searched him, wary at first, then softening as he pushed off the wall and stepped closer. In the weak lantern light, Thomas could see his small hands trembling. Is that him?" the boy whispered, pointing toward the bound man in the shadows. Thomas turned, moving toward the man tied at the wrists. With a flick of his knife, he cut the rope. The man collapsed to his knees, coughing before raising his head. The lantern light revealed a gaunt face beneath weeks of dirt and beard, but the shape of it... Thomas recognized it. His chest tightened. "Elias," Thomas said, his voice breaking for the first time that night. Elias lifted his eyes, disbelief flickering there. "Tom?" His voice was hoarse, each syllable scraped raw. The boy stepped forward suddenly, eyes wet. Is he... Elias blinked, then looked at the boy as if seeing him for the first time. And then Thomas saw it. The resemblance. Not in the shape of their faces, but in the way their eyes darted, in the stubborn set of their mouths. Thomas felt the cold realization creeping in. The boy wasn't here for just any rescue. He was here because this man, this half-dead figure in the dirt, was his brother. "I knew you'd come," Elias said, almost smiling, though pain etched deep lines around his mouth. "Didn't think you'd bring..." He trailed off, looking at the boy, confused. The boy reached into his coat pocket, pulling out the crumpled letter Thomas had read days ago. The one addressed, "To the man who saved my brother." Only now Thomas understood. "That letter," Thomas said, his voice gravelly, "ain't from the boy's ma?" Elias shook his head slowly. "No, that's from me. Wrote it months back. Got word you were still living. I didn't know they'd send him." Thomas felt as if the air had been knocked from him. All this time, he thought the boy had been sent to find a stranger's rescuer. But no, this was blood. This was family. The boy glanced between them, his voice shaking. "Mama told me to find you, Mr. McGraw, said you were the only one who could save Uncle Elias, and that you'd take care of me if..." His voice trailed off, and tears welled in his eyes. Thomas crouched, his gloved hand resting gently on the boy's shoulder. "If what, son?" The boy swallowed hard. "If she didn't make it through the winter." For a long moment, the mind felt even colder. Thomas's mind flashed to the harsh blizzards rolling over the plains, the hunger that stalked the weak. He didn't have to ask to know the truth. It was written in the boy's eyes. Elias let out a shuddering breath. "She's gone, ain't she?" The boy nodded once, biting his lip to keep from crying. Thomas stood, his jaw set. "We're leaving this place. Tonight." He slung Elias's arm over his shoulder, lifting him to his feet with a grunt. The boy followed close, the lantern light swinging wildly as they made their way to the mine's mouth. Outside, the night. Air hit them like a knife, cold, sharp, and clean after the stench of the mine. The stars were fierce and bright over the prairie, and the sound of their horses shifting restlessly reached them. Thomas helped Elias into the saddle, then lifted the boy up behind him. As Thomas mounted his own horse, he looked at them, broken, tired, and clinging to each other in the dark. The trail ahead would be long, the winter merciless. But Thomas knew one thing for certain. This boy wasn't just a stranger at his door anymore. He was his kin, and that meant something in this hard country. Thomas tightened his grip on the reins. "Let's go home," he said. The horses started forward, hooves crunching over frostbitten ground, carrying them toward the unknown, and whatever waited for them beyond the horizon. The campfire crackled softly in the midnight silence, sending sparks swirling into the black sky. Jack sat on a flat rock, his knees aching from the long night's ordeal, the weight of exhaustion pulling at him. Across the fire, the boy, Eli, sat, hunched, the worn envelope still in his small hands. It had survived the ride, the gunfire, the wind, and the dust. Jack's eyes kept drifting toward it like a moth to flame. "You sure you want me to read it?" Jack asked quietly, his voice barely carrying over the pop of the firewood. Eli nodded without looking up, his small fingers trembling as he passed it over. "Mama said it was for the man who saved her brother. Said you'd understand." Jack took the envelope slowly, the paper soft from years of being handled. His name wasn't on it, but the words, "For the man who saved my brother," were written in a delicate, almost childlike script. His chest tightened. He opened it with careful fingers, unfolding a single sheet of paper. The handwriting inside was neat, but a little faded, like it had been written long ago. The words seemed to blur for a moment before he focused. "Dear stranger, if you're reading this, you saved my brother. I don't know your name, but I want you to know what you did mattered. You found him on a night when I couldn't, because I was only 12 and too far away to hear him cry. That night you gave him water, a blanket, and a chance to see the sunrise. I never forgot it." Jack's throat went dry. He knew the night she meant, 15 years ago, during a bitter winter. He'd been riding back from Cheyenne when he'd found a half-frozen boy huddled behind a barn. Jack had given him food, wrapped him in his coat, and left before the boy's folks even knew who had helped. He hadn't thought of it since, though why? Letter continued. "I grew up and built a life. But trouble came for us. My husband died in a mining accident. Then the men who ran the mine decided I owed them his debts. I couldn't fight them. I couldn't keep my son safe. I remembered what my mama used to say, that in the West sometimes strangers will save you when no one else can. I thought of you. If anyone could keep my boy safe, it'd be the man who once saved my brother. So I'm sending him to you." Jack's jaw clenched. He read the last line twice. "Please be his safe place. Mary Collins, Mary Collins." The name struck him like a hammer. She was the sister of that half-frozen boy, Ben Collins. Jack had crossed paths with Ben a few times since then, never realizing the connection. Eli was watching him now, eyes wide and searching. "So, you knew my uncle?" Jack folded the letter and stared into the fire for a long moment before answering. "Yeah, kid. I knew him. Didn't know your mama. But she's got grit. Took a lot for her to send you off like that." Eli's lip trembled, but he nodded, trying to be brave. "She said, if I found you, I'd be okay." Jack set the letter down and reached into his saddlebag. He pulled out the same wool blanket he'd given Ben years ago, the one that had been returned to him by chance later. Without a word, he wrapped it around Eli's shoulders. "You're not just okay, son," Jack said, his voice firm but warm. "You're with me now, and no one's going to lay a hand on you." In the distance, the wind carried the faint sound of hooves. Not wild ones. This was controlled, deliberate. Jack's hand went to his revolver, but then he saw the figures emerging from the shadows. A group of riders, 3 of them, all armed but not aiming. The lead rider was Ben Collins himself, older, broader, but unmistakable. "Jack Callahan," Ben called, his voice deep and sure. Jack stood. "That's me." Ben dismounted, his eyes scanning Eli before settling on Jack. "You've got my sister's boy. I came as soon as I got her telegram. She's safe now. We're here to take you. Both someplace where these mind snakes won't find you. Jack glanced at Eli, who clung tighter to the blanket. We're both going, Jack said firmly. Ben smiled faintly. Then saddle up. You saved me once, Callahan. Guess it's my turn. As they rode out under the pale silver of the moon, Jack kept the letter tucked close to his chest. The boy leaned against him in the saddle, trusting completely. The Old West was full of dust, danger, and hard men, but tonight, under the endless stars, Jack knew there were still places where a promise could outlast the years, and he intended to keep this one.